Hello and welcome to Commodity Culture, where our goal is to make you a better investor in the commodity space. My name is Jesse Day. Before we dive in, standard disclaimer, nothing here is investment advice. Do your own due diligence. And today's episode is sponsored by ARC Silver Gold Osmium. They offer personalized service and competitive prices with no minimum purchase for silver, gold, platinum, or osmium. Here's just some of the comments left on this YouTube channel about ARC SGO and owner Ian Everard. Have bought from ARC, good source and price. I cannot say enough good about Ian and his company. He is the most honest individual I could find in order to buy precious metals. If you are looking to buy precious metals, I recommend Ian at ARC Silver. He is a straight shooter. So go to arcsgo.com and contact Ian Everard today at 307 264 9441 or by email at ian@arcsgo.com, and make sure to tell him that Commodity Culture sent you. And today's guest is the author of Why Gold, Why Now, and the Tucker Letter, where he shows you how he positions his wealth to survive, thrive, and stay ahead of the pack. Somebody I've wanted on for a very long time, so I'm extremely excited. E.B. Tucker, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you. And I want to get started right off the bat with something you've brought up in several interviews in the past, which is that we should all enjoy the time we have right now because the level of freedom we have today will likely diminish in the future. I would like to dive a little deeper into that concept. Explain how you think we could lose our freedoms and the future that you see up ahead.
Well, I mean, the first problem is most American people are, they have this like perpetual anxiety about money. And the more you dig into it, the more bizarre it is because they seem worried about their house price and their retirement, status. And then they do really crazy things with money. Like they waste money on bizarre things, insurance and, online college, and I mean all these things that are worthless. And then they just need a little bit more money, and then they can finally be happy. But it's like, well, what? Why don't you just be happy now? I mean, you just, I just think, you're going to be dead at some point, and why delay doing things that are fun? And I just think people really, they just get it all wrong. Like, because then they think, well, easy for you to say because you're rich. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, am I really rich? Maybe. I mean, I know people that are really rich, and they got problems, I mean, they got like, there's a recall on their jet or something. I mean, it's like, it's all relative, right? I mean, I think I'm writing this new book now, which people are going to hate, because there's no like junky stock tip in there. But I'll tell you what, if you read this thing, your life will improve because I'm going to tell a lot of very personal stories that I probably will later regret telling. And the reason I'm going to tell them is because I wanted something when I was younger, and I wanted intellectual independence, and I've been thinking a lot about the path that it took to get there because this year for me has been a year of transition, and I've been talking to my friends a lot about this, and I call it like EB 6.0. You've had all these like EB 1.0 was like the guy that walked out of a reform school, with a backpack and $500 and was like, "What do you do now?" And it was like, I was like an electrician helper for a little while, and I just kind of like I write about all this, so like I figured it all out. Now, the other thing I want to say real quick is I didn't grow up poor. I mean, a lot of people like it really bothers me in America. Like everybody you talk to talks about how they grew up dirt poor, like fighting for sticks to chew on, for sustenance. And I get really sick of it. I'm like, there's a bell curve of wealth distribution. There's people over here that are eating sticks for breakfast, and then there's people over here that have private aviation, and then there's a lot of people in the middle. And so where I grew up was like in the upper middle class area. And what that means is that, my dad had a little business, and we went to the beach for a week every summer, and we all went to school, and we had to wear a blue blazer to church, and it was pretty nice. I mean, there was problems, but like my point is that like I didn't grow up with I didn't know where Aspen, Colorado was when I grew up, but I also like was totally convinced that I would be able to kind of like, I wouldn't have any fear of like not being able to live, through like college years or something. But my point is, I tell all these stories because I think there's a lot of people out there, a lot of people that are badly diluted with the current thought leadership. Okay. Like the thought leadership is very weak, and anybody that tells kind of like personal and true revealing stories is a little bit shunned and all this stuff. And so I think as people read these stories, they're going to think about their own journey, and that's what kind of gets us here today. And the reason why I'm telling you all this is because you cannot bring this mentality into what's ahead of like, well, just give me the answer. Just tell me what day the intelligence, forces of the world are going to black out my phone and make me agree to onerous privacy, surrendering of personal freedom to get it back on. What day is it? Is it April 28th, 2029? And my answer is, who cares? Like, because what are you going to do for the next 5 years? What are you going to do during this time? Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on my relationship with my kids. I'm going to play tennis. I'm going to, work, like do physical activities that I enjoy. And I'm going to try to expand my capacity for personal relationships, which, the older I get, the more I realize like that's a problem that I'm writing about that in the book. Talk about something, that's ill-advised. I'm writing about the fact that, we put all these walls up to keep people out and all this stuff because we don't, we've had bad experiences. And what does that do? Well, that means we live behind a wall. I literally live behind a wall. It's like, it's just, I don't know. I think these things are important because we're not going to live forever. I mean, there's been 80 billion people in the world. You probably can't list 50 of them, and most of the ones are like from a socialist history book or something that we were fed as middle school students. So anyway, so I think what you're going to look back on this year. I think you're going to be at some point. Think about this. Let's do an easier trick than this. If you're middle aged, how cool were the 90s? How cool. I mean, you could pretty much, with a Western passport, go anywhere. Everything was pretty cheap. Nobody hassled you at the airport. You went through one basic metal detector. I mean, they would say you cannot bring a firearm on the plane. And you would say, why not? So you just can't do it. And you'd be like, go put it in your car, which is parked like 100 yards away for $5 a day. And you're like, okay. And so then you get on the plane and you go. Or you could go to the bank and you could say, I'd like to do a Canadian private placement. I'd like to wire some money to Canada. Wonderful. Would you like a coffee while we do it? Now it's like, are you a terrorist? No. Are you, it's like, believe me, of all the things that I'm doing, it's not financing, some illicit activity. So I'm saying now flip that thinking towards tomorrow and think about your digital life and how monitored you are. And we don't have enough time to get into like how the money works with that. But if once you see that, you're like, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Summer of 2024, I'm going to do everything with my family, with my friends, with people that are smart, like with cool people. I'm gonna get rid of people that are hassling me and holding me down. People really hold you down, man. They really hold you down. You gotta have the courage to let 90% of your friend group fade away sometimes, because people are uncomfortable if you start changing too much. They need you to stay exactly the same. They need you to believe all the things they believe. It's important because it makes them uncomfortable if you don't.
Yeah, some very good points there, and extremely nuanced answer. Very much appreciate it. I do want to shift over. This is kind of related, and that is the topic of central bank digital currencies. As you view things currently as we stand here today, how likely is a CBDC to be launched in some form or another, both in the US and potentially globally? I think globally it's a very, very ambitious project. There's a lot of countries that still use cash for a lot of transactions. Where I'm at in Serbia, other places here in the Balkans, they do not have an infrastructure for a digital payment system like that. It would probably take a decade or more to implement. But nonetheless, it seems like countries around the world, central banks around the world are developing this technology. Where are we right now in the CBDC story? And how likely is it that this gets rolled out in the near future, in your view?
It's going to be great. I mean, if you're of the mind where you like to control and enslave people, you this is going to be like a really cool thing because you'll be able to eliminate counterfeiting permanently. You'll be able to collect whatever tax percent you want. If you decide you want 14% tax collection, that's what you get, because it's done through a blockchain. And then people say, well, blockchain's cool. I heard about that and I made some money from Pancake Coin. Not the same thing. Not the same thing, because this is the blockchain technology in a closed loop. So essentially, it's like if you had all the Bitcoin or 90%, you would control. That's the cool thing about Bitcoin, is that it's so distributed that but what if you had 85% of the Bitcoin? Then you would control, you would control the whole ecosystem. So it's going to be great. And the other thing that'll be great is that if you're naughty, then you can't spend on leisure activities because your device won't work. All right. So what about all these places that do cash? Okay, so I'm going to say something insensitive, and I'm going to say these places don't matter. The reason why they don't matter is if you look at the pie, the total pie, the little cash backwaters, which you and I tend to enjoy, are such a sliver of that they, on a broad scale, they don't work. And so I would start thinking about the future for them. Like, look over in, I think it's Nigeria, has an M-Pesa system, that runs through the kind of like a 2G phone network. And in the US, I think we'll still use cash for, if you notice, okay, so in my first book, I talked about money, which is unfortunate, but I think at the time was we needed to talk about that. But there were $5,000 bill, in the US, like circulating. And if you bought a house, you take like $4,000 or $5,000 bills and you buy the house, it's pretty crazy. But now 100 is your biggest. So 100 is like inadequate for coffee and croissants in some places. It's not much money. I mean, seriously, like I remember when I was younger, like I felt very confident if I had $100 bill in my possession, as a young guy. I mean, I would be like, nobody can stop me tonight, right? It was like this. But I mean, now it's like it's not much money, and we haven't progressed any higher. So I think the plan is you will still be able to use cash. You will still be able to, like, bet on a horse or something using, $100 bill. I don't think anybody cares about that. The numbers get bigger and bigger and bigger, and so the numbers get to the point where it's like you won't be able to do anything material with cash. It will be very difficult. And if you see, the walls are closing in on that now. I mean, like, you can't pay someone more than $600 in a year without going through this massive onerous process in the U.S. So it's already happened. I mean, like, I used to keep a lot of cash. I mean, like I don't know, like, not for any reason, but I would think, like, might as well have like 20 grand around in case there's a hurricane. But now it's like, I don't know, five might do it, right? Because I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, it's just like, and because the most like legitimate people can't even take it because they're like, Wells Fargo charges you money to deposit money. I mean, how weird is that? It's like they're like, if you bring more than like 3 grand or something, they'd start hitting you with this big fee. I mean, it's almost like futile. So that's coming. Okay, that is coming, and it's going to come through the phone. I think people really love the phone. I mean, I hate the phone. so just so you know, like my kids, they get upset with me because some of the places we go, you can't get in without the phone. Like you need to have, so whatever. They're like, why don't you bring the phone? I'm like, I want to be with you guys. They're like, yeah, but you need your, where's your phone? You know, why don't you like the phone? I think that it bothers me a lot that people are vape in one hand and phone in the other, and then their number one thing is they're like lonely. I'm like, what? It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, like honestly, like just leave. You could exist without a phone, really, which is a bizarre concept, but that's how it's going to come is through the phone. And believe me, it's coming like 100%. You will take it and you will like it and it will happen. And any sort of dreaming about how you'll evade this is ridiculous.
So going to these jurisdictions, these backwaters that we enjoy, as you put it, that transact in cash a lot, is that one way to escape the system if you just decide to stay there?
Yeah, but you're not going to be able to totally do it because you see the where you need to be honest with yourself and me as well is like we love the backwater, but we also love like making a big stock trade. Well, which one is it? Okay, are you willing? I mean, I had a bunch of rental property. I had this guy Mark that used to do all this work for me. So Mark, I met Mark at the Verizon store. I talk about this in the book. He had a van, this old van with all these Ron Paul stickers on it. So I was like, this guy must be cool. So I met this guy anyway. So he was really proud of the fact that his son didn't have a social security number, but also his son could not drive, had never been to school, which I think it's okay to not go to school, but didn't have a bank account and could not fly. So essentially, it was like the kid was. It was like he should have been born in the 19th century or something. I mean, it's like, I mean, is that really, is that the life that you want? Now, Mark did like that life because he was kind of like a frontiersman. But I have like I think it's fun to indulge in some of that behavior, but I also like to do commercial activities that involve, the bank accounts and all these things. And so I think you got to be realistic about the fact that, like, are we really going to go that way? If so, why are we doing the podcast? So it might as well be like, having training as a blacksmith or something. So, so I think it's important to go with the flow, and to enjoy these. I like to enjoy the things that we like, and get something out of that, and then also kind of play both sides of it. I don't want to be dirt poor. Again, I don't want to go back, and I'm getting to. It'll mess up my tennis game. If I'm all day chopping wood, I'll have no. I hit the one-handed backhand. It's too difficult. If I'm tired from gathering sticks all day, but I think it's important to see this stuff. To see this stuff, like we were talking earlier about Argentina before we started recording. I love Argentina because it's like a great culture. It's a bit dysfunctional. It's very difficult for them to implement onerous restrictions on people because they kind of can't get their act together in a great way. I mean that in a great way. It's not a criticism. It's like you have the culture I enjoy, you have the lifestyle, you have the personality of the people, and then you're not going to be able to implement. The U.S. is very organized. I mean, the U.S. is like a zombie culture that will do anything you tell them to do. They will do anything you tell them to. I mean, they if they're worried about an airborne pathogen, they won't touch doorknobs. It's like they don't even think about it. They're not even like, oh, wait a second, like what I love about US people too? They'll get a virus and they'll take antibiotics. And you're like, antibiotics, even the name tells you they attack bacteria, not a virus. And they're like, well, yeah, but it's better. I'm like, okay, you just do whatever, you just keep doing you. But a lot of cultures aren't like that. Where you are, Balkans, I mean, people actually tend to think a lot about things. They really, because of their conditioning, they ask a lot of questions, maybe too many. If you're a U.S. leader, you would say you're asking too many questions, which to silence you. But anyway, this is all coming. This is all coming. So enjoy now, because there's not going to be a lot of way to avoid the central bank, dragnet.
Well, where does gold come into all of this? You've mentioned before that you don't need a lot of gold to sleep well at night. You just need a small allocation. However, if they implement some kind of reset of the financial system, could this not cause bank bail-ins, shutdowns?
Definitely.
Wouldn't you want to have a greater chunk of your wealth stored outside the financial system in the form of gold or Bitcoin or
It's
something
all
like that?
relative. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I manage a trust, and that's in my newsletter. People get to subscribers get to see what I do for the trust. So I a lot of times talk about the trust because it's not like giving people advice. It's just like, look, I mean, you're basically getting a look under the hood at what I do, but 24 hours before I do it. And the trust is not trying to make 100-to-1 returns, because as a trustee, you would be sued. You would be sued. Okay, so you're trying to buy trending situations, things that are trending. So when you look at hard things to own, like stable foundational things to own, for the trust, you look at like a 3% gold allocation and like a 2% Bitcoin allocation. And Bitcoin people are like, that's ridiculous. It should be 80. And you're like, I don't think you're crazy. I don't think you're crazy. I just think you're missing the point. The trust needs to flow with the times. The trust has beneficiaries. The beneficiaries have, you're supposed to protect their ability to function through the ups and downs of a changing system. You're not supposed to outsmart everybody by having 80% Bitcoin. You're not supposed to say, I did it right by buying all kilo bars, putting them in a vault, and then sitting on them. Now, if you have $10 million and your goal is just to freeze your wealth permanently and you buy all kilo bars, you might succeed. Okay. But it depends on what your goals are. I think that the cool thing about physical gold is that it really puts you in a different mindset. Like, you're checking out when you have physical gold. And so how much do you want to check out? 100%? Well, then you're totally checked out. And it's like, well, then why are you watching this right now? If you're checked out, oh, I want to make profit. Wait a minute, I thought you wanted to check out. It's like, people can't examine their own thinking. They delude themselves. And so my personal belief is that with a percentage of my percentage is a little higher than 3%, but it's not. I actually don't know what it's. Everything is very difficult to calculate. But if I were managing $10 million, for someone like you, I would have a percentage of gold, and I would have a percentage of Bitcoin, and then I would have stocks, and I would have real estate for you to live in and vacation in and stuff. And I would have alternative investments, and then I would have some cash. And my goal would be, if you came back in 5 years, you still felt rich. That's the trick, right? I mean, like, the numbers are getting bigger. Like the numbers in the world are getting bigger faster than gold is getting bigger. And that's because the gold market is completely controlled by the futures market, which is a system that, if you really want to understand it without being labeled a conspiracy theorist, watch or read The Prize. There's a the Jurgen book. Read that. It's very big, so you might want to watch it on Amazon. There's like 8 episodes, filmed in the 90s, and watch the part where this is like maybe in the latter third of it, where they talk about how frustrated Arm& Hammer got when Libya withdrew his whatever contract concession under the new Gaddafi regime, and then the West was like, we got to get these Arabs under control. They're having too much power, and we're going to do it with the NYMEX. And you're like, that sounds very familiar. So, like, we can control the oil price using the futures market. And you're like, but if you say that about gold, you're considered a conspiracy theorist. But you're not trying to allege conspiracy. It's actually not conspiracy. I mean, the mechanics are very easy to understand. It's actually very logical. And as the gold buyer, you should be happy about this. I drive a nice Audi. If the price was manipulated by paper Audis that didn't exist, I would be excited, not upset. I would buy numerous Audi S7s. I would have a fleet of them because I would think the price was artificially. I would think that the actual value was lower than, I mean, it was higher. Like the price was lower than the actual value, and I would be thrilled about this. And so with gold, I think once you see that, it really helps to make sense of things. So you get a little bit of gold. I mean, if you have money, you get a little bit of gold. Like you freeze some of your wealth, and you feel good about that. But I don't think that you do it to outsmart bail-ins and all these things. I think you do it to be like a spider. You have 8 legs. You're walking around. You can pretty much go over anything. That's how you think about your gold position.
And do you hold physical silver as well? Obviously, on the far end of the
Unfortunately,
spectrum, when it comes to the
unfortunately,
okay,
yeah.
when it comes to the extreme silver bugs, they say, well, in the event of a collapse of the system, you want silver for
I don't think
barterability
so.
in
No,
case you need to swap silver coins back and forth. Well, what's your thoughts on physical silver?
I mean it's fun because you can get tons of it, right? But it's also a hassle because you can get tons of it. I mean, you end up with way too much, and the silver price has not performed. Basically, the silver price is right where it was in the fourth quarter of 2011. So that means you've set out, multiple crypto rallies, the whole weed market, uh, the whole AI boom, and you could have just bought the Nasdaq and done far better. So I think you got to be realistic about silver. I do not think you'll be trading your coins for groceries, because I don't think if that scenario happened and then you assume that refrigerated trucking is unfazed, I think is ridiculous. I mean, so I think you don't buy it for that reason. I think you get. I have a bunch of 100-ounce bars and monster boxes and all this stuff. The 100-ounce bars are really fun because you put them on your desk and people are like, "Whoa, what is that?" When they come over, they like hold it. It's so heavy. They've never seen it before. So that's fun. It's a conversation starter. So I have more silver than I want, though. I actually kind of regret buying so much silver. Back in the day, I bought tons of silver, and I just think there wasn't really any point. It's like I do think the price will go higher, and I also still don't think I'll change my mind. And I also don't think I'll sell it either. It's kind of one of those things where my thinking is it doesn't make any sense. I mean, so if you're a silver bug, I mean, try to make some more money and buy some gold. It's much more efficient. You can store $1 million of the gold, no problem. It's like it fits, like in a shaving travel like dop kit. Whereas $1 million of the silver, I mean, you have to put like a separate wing on your house. It's crazy, and it tarnishes, and the whole thing is a hassle. But I don't think it's bad. It's just that like the silver market is very complicated. I mean, I have a friend that was way high up in that scene, and let me just tell you something. What they did in 2021, remember when the Wall Street Gem and those Wall Street Silver guys,
Yeah.
that almost worked.
Wow.
So like they made people sweat. Okay, um, nobody wants to hold the silver. None of the banks want. They have the silver, but what happens is that they don't want. It's dead money, and so they don't want to sit with the silver. They have to like financialize it, and there's too many claims. It's not fraudulent. It's just like it's the name of the game is that nobody wants to sit on that asset, which makes me want to sit on the asset. I'm like, not everything has to be a basis point trade. Sometimes you can just have something that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I like that. I want to shift to mining stocks now. When it comes to the gold miners specifically, we've seen a run up in some of the majors, your Barracks, Newmonts, Agnico, Eagles, etc. Do you think there's still opportunity to be had in the gold and maybe even silver mining space? Obviously, far less of a selection there. And if so, is it in those producers? Do you think they have a ways to run here? Developers, explorers, royalties. What are you looking at in the mining space right now?
I look. I mean, I'm pretty negative on it. I mean, it depends on what your goals are. I mean, my goal is to make money, is to see the price of the stock rise, and that hasn't happened. Now, it's happened with Agnico, it's happened with Alamos. Um, I don't count like 1 week performance, as I count like uptrend, as an uptrend. I mean, I think Agnico, I think what we've seen is that, Barrick is a complicated company with complicated risk in complicated places. I think it's a really good company. I think the leadership is really strong, but I don't think that it's necessarily been a great way to play the move in gold. Newmont is similar for different reasons, but then you step down like next, and you've got that segment that's next has been where all the alpha has come from. If you bought Agnico, you bought Alamos, you captured this move, but you didn't really capture what we thought you would capture, right? I mean, you didn't capture like a massive leveraged event to gold. Gold is up nicely. I mean, from a year ago, it's like, what are we up 20% or something like that? And so if you have a stock that's up 50, that sounds good, but you're like, well, what we thought was going to happen was 20% move with cost flat, because costs are up over a longer time, but costs are not really necessarily up like in the last quarter. I mean, it's not, the cost wave didn't like hit yesterday. I mean, it kind of like hit after COVID. So I mean, like that was, you had kind of like a one-time lift in cost, which is material, but it's not like they kept flying through the roof. I mean, the oil price is flat. I mean, the energy's a quarter of mining expense. I mean, oil prices. Joe Biden said it was going to be 80. It's 80. So it's like labor. I mean, okay, labor shot up, but labor's kind of like not really the pressure point, at this moment. There's a lot of complicated things, but here's my point. If you've got fresh dollars and you're going into this space, why? I mean, I'm not on any. I think people are very confused about my position. I have not been on any boards, since like way back into last year, and then before that, I was like, companies that I was on the board of merged, and I was walled away from that, because I was on both. So I really have not been involved in any companies for a long time. And when I was involved with them, I sat on the board, which means that you're elected by shareholders to sit on the board. It doesn't mean you run the company. And I got extremely disenchanted with what I worked through, right? Because as a major shareholder that had major money at risk, I was like an outcast on the board, because it's almost like the name of the game on the board is collect fees, get stock options, wait for the gold bull market. But my message was, the gold bull market is here and your stock is not moving. And they're like, we just need some more options. Surely it'll move at some point. So it's like, what are you waiting for? You're waiting for like the 70s to come back? I mean, are the 70s going to come back? I don't see that happening. I mean, I talk to people like, at the coffee shop all around. I'm curious what they're up to. I don't see people that are like, I got to get a commodity stock that's an explorer that is poking holes in the middle of the prairie somewhere and is going to like, so I don't think these things are bad. I mean, like in Vancouver at the conferences, they have a curtain in the conference hall that blocks off the unused area. So the conference is now so small that it could be basically at like a residence inn, on the freeway somewhere. I mean, it's very, very small. And then within the conference, most of the people work for companies. So they're sucking fees and they're sucking salary and stock options and equity grants off the company, which is fine in a bull market, but they're not moving. So that's a huge problem. If you look at a stock and to move 10% off the bottom is not really a move. If it's in a downtrend and the CEO talks like he or she is an economist, which they're not, that's their feeding trough. They show up like a hog and they eat as much as possible until satiated. It's never enough till the board stops them, and they wait for a bull market. So waiting for a bull market is not really an effective strategy. That because I'm involved in a lot of other companies non-related to the mining business, and it's increasingly clear that the mining business is like in a time warp where they think it's like 1984 and you're going to have the 70s again, and they're like waiting for this. That's not good. So before you say, oh yeah, I mean the bull market's already here, and if you have a stock that's not moving, that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem. I mean, if it's a small stock, it's like, yeah, but they're going to drill. Well, you know what? Drilling is really expensive, and the odds of finding something are not good. So I'm not saying that it's bad. It's just that, like, what is your goal? Most of the time, a mining stock investor's goal is not to make money. It's to gamble. So, so I have a friend named Mike that plays so many slot games that the casino will bring a plane to get him. He plays for days until his wife tells him we have to leave. He doesn't know what day it is. He's very rich. He loves to gamble and he doesn't apologize about it. He does not apologize. And I think if you're going to buy risky little stocks, then you should admit that you're a gambler and you have no control of yourself and you don't really care about making money. You want to have excitement. But if you want to make money, then I think you have to be realistic about what's going on. You're in a bull market. This is the bull market, and they're not moving. Now, why are they not moving? Okay, so one quick thing. I was on the phone with a huge gold dealer yesterday. He was telling me that when the phone rings, 5 calls, 4 of them are sellers, 1 buyer. So 80% of his volume is people selling. So what does it tell you when about, back in 2011 when Mr. T was running ads, it was the opposite. You had people buying like crazy and almost no one selling. And so now it's the opposite. So the gold price is probably going to go higher. It's probably going to go higher because people are usually wrong, like lots of people. And if the gold price is going to go higher, what's going to cause those stocks to go up? You're going to have a fresh crop of people that are going to get involved in those names. And where's that crop of people going to come from? Because when I listen to the CEOs, I hear delusional people that have their own personal ATM, to suck way too much money off of these companies and wait for a bull market and pad themselves with stock options to the point where they might suffocate. Who's going to buy that? I mean, New York's not going to buy that. Yeah, who's going to buy that? Like Silicon Valley is not going to buy. I was just in Silicon Valley meeting with a machine learning company. They're like, why would you want that company? Like, I mean, there's no value created there. There's no scale. Forget about it. I mean, it's like, it's a really good point. I think you need to consider the other perspective. And so you should invest strategically if you have to have exposure there. Buy the stock that's going to go up. Don't buy the stock that's going to just dilute you and go down. I'm not doing that, and people are like confused, but I see people's comments all the time. I'm like, you guys, it's even worse if you buy a stock and you don't know what a board of directors is. If you don't understand the difference between the CEO and a board member, and a shareholder, and if you don't know, you should definitely not be buying stocks. Like you get a proxy in the mail, you're supposed to vote. People, they're like, that's junk mail. No. You bought the stock. You're an owner. You should vote. You should read that. If you're not going to do that, then you're just gambling, which is also fine, but stop being so rude about it. When you lose money, quit blaming someone. Does this make sense?
Yes.
I feel like people, I was on the stage at the Vancouver thing this year, and I feel like people were confused by what I was saying. I was like, you guys, and look what's happened. Exactly what I said. The gold price is much higher, and those stocks are lower. Now, a few of them are up, and there's a lot of hope. People are like, well, I've got hope. Well, hope is not a strategy. That's not a strategy. I mean, that was Barack Obama's strategy, but it worked for him. But it wasn't, it doesn't work for most of us.
Yeah, fascinating. And yes, I have my card right here for Scorpio tankers. I'm going to vote. Sadly, being in Serbia, I get a lot of these things late, so the deadline's passed by the time I get it, but not this one. So
You can get an account on Proxy Vote. You can get an account and put all your brokerages in there, and they'll line up for you, and you never miss one.
okay, great. Yeah.
Now some of them, some of the stock, if you have a physical certificate, you have to wait for the mail. So or you can register that with Proxy Vote. It's like they've made it easy. Um, and I mean, I've got way too many stocks. Like all these things are all lists of stocks, and I've given my kids stock too. And so like in Caterpillar and all this different stuff, and I give them some Bitcoin, everything. So we vote. I mean, you can't vote for Bitcoin, has no board of directors, but Caterpillar does. And so we vote the proxies, and it's very, very entertaining. My kids vote on gender, mostly on gender. And the second most important thing to them is like how the person looks. Like they'll say, well, that person doesn't look nice. Vote against them. And it's really, really fun. And it's their stock. So
Yeah.
I'm like, look, I didn't give it to them like in a tricky way. I just gave it to them. Like so when they're 18, it's theirs. And so I let them vote any way they want, but my daughter is 100% female persuaded. Like one of the people on the board was a teacher from Berkeley. And I was like, this is an oil company. I'm like, what does the teacher know about oil? And she's like, I don't know, but she looks nice. So I'm like, you see how but at least they understand that they're voting. And this is not like an American election. When you own stock, like this is a real election that matters. Like it's not one of these elections where the machines get hacked or something. This one, like, you should definitely pay attention. Even if you have 100 shares, like, why not? I mean, why are you buying the stock if you're not going to be an owner? You're an owner of the business. Don't believe like nonsense from the CEO, hyperbole, like hope and dream and prayer of something happening. You're the real owner. If you walked into that office and that CEO was making $1 million a year and telling you that he hoped something would happen, you would fire that person. You'd be like, let's get out of here. Like you have a massive severance policy, you have massive equity incentive, the stock's down, and you're telling me about hope, you're fired. Get out of here. Give us our parking space back. That's what you would say. And so you can say that with your voting.
Yes, very well said. I do want to finish on, you mentioned oil there. Are there any other commodities that you're looking at? Maybe discuss the energy space if that's a place you think presents value in one way or the other.
Yeah, I've in the newsletter we have, we're not playing it through producers. We're playing it, two other ways. And I'm pretty concerned with the trade. I mean, it's a cyclical trade. Energy is a cyclical trade. It goes too low and it goes too high. And I feel like people don't understand how this works, but like the marginal buyer sets the price. And in the oil market, if you're in the oil market, the big risk is $0. Like, I mean, if you produce too much, it's literally worthless because you have nowhere to put it. If you don't produce enough, then there's no price too high, right? It's very complicated. And so at $80 is this level where long-term projects actually work. Uh, I definitely pay attention. I have a refiner in there. In the U.S., they're not building any refineries. And I think demand is really high there. That's the best performer. But then I have, other things I have like offshore drillers. I'm really confused because I mean they're producing lots of cash. They have low to no debt or manageable debt. They're a lot of them returning capital to shareholders. They appear to be fully booked, and at high rates, and they're not moving. And I think it's essentially that the cyclical trade is not taken off, and it's not taken off for a while, and it's kind of concerning. So I think when you get into energy, you have to be very, very objective about what's going on because I don't know that you would rebuy those stocks. I mean, I've told the readers like we're pretty much flat, and I've told them like something is not right, with this, and I don't know if the market's forecasting a massive demand fall, or if the market's forecasting ample supply down the road, but like something is off, because to sit at 80, and to not have the support side of the business rallying, it seems to be a problem. So I mean, look, the commodity space, like I get it, the commodities are up. I get it that like the charts look good, but with investing dollars, it's a big problem, because we want to grow. We don't want to like look at cocoa and be like, oh wow, commodities are up. I mean, it's pretty useless, because like my Morgan Stanley guy was asking me how to play cocoa. I was like, you don't do that. You just it's like it's super complicated. Like, you're not in that business. You're not a physical commodity trader. That's not your game. And so it's kind of useless to even see. But like, there are other parts of the market that are much more interesting if you're trying to turn your dollar into $1.25, which is like that like at the end of the day, that's I met this guy once that was like a huge coin seller on one of the online TV, like what is it, like QVC or something. Anyway, so this guy asked him, "What do you do?" He goes, "I turn quarters into dollars." And I was like, that's what we all should be doing, right? But most of us are ideological, where we're like, I've got to have like some weird commodity investment that makes no sense and never goes up, and like just makes me more and more frustrated. Like, why do that? I mean, I don't understand. It doesn't, like, you got cybersecurity companies that are up like, 80% a year compounded average for like years. And you're like, what? I mean, what's wrong with that? I mean, the U.S. government like literally is putting out press release, like news stories about how the cyber attacks are going to be more and more and more and more and more, and the scale of them, and the quantum computing attacks, and that's like the best business in the world. I mean, you're like, we've written about this probably a dozen times in the newsletter. I mean, it's like, I don't know of any other business where demand every quarter is like up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And then people are like, well, the PE is too high. And it's like, hey, well, buy mining stock. The PE is like 3. You'll be super happy. So like, if PE is what you want, but I don't care about that. I want a stock that's going to go higher. That's what I want to buy.
Yeah, cybersecurity, very fascinating. Well,
It's unbelievable.
yeah, interesting. I haven't looked into it at all, so I'm definitely going to. Final question before I let you go: uranium, bullish, bearish, neutral, couldn't care less.
Bullish on uranium. I don't have adequate exposure. I think the problem with uranium is that I owned it around Fukushima. I got out of it. I owned it again in 2014 and 15. I thought it looked pretty solid. I got, just kind of like wore out time on that. And then looked at it again. It looked good again, like in 17, 18. And so I think it's really interesting that it reminds me of people that shorted Japanese bonds 10 years ago. They were right. I think it's all how you execute. So I think for people that are positioned there now, I mean, it seems pretty sensible. The thing I would watch like really closely is companies that are using small modular reactors to fund generative AI, computer farms. That to me is like unbelievable. I'm playing it a different way. I'm playing it with something different. I'm playing it with cooling, and we're doing that in the letter. And so I'm keeping up with it, but I'm not messing with the small modular reactors or the fuel, because I just don't have the capacity. But I don't think it's crazy to do that, because it's clear to me that it's safer, it's sensible, it's powerful, and it's the way we're gonna run these farms. They generate a lot of heat, a lot of heat. It's unbelievable, and they'll just like take the entire power grid. It's like they'll take. People are like worried about their home energy use. I'm like, it's totally irrelevant. I mean, like the generative AI farm that's like learning the genetic code in 5 minutes. I mean, that's the real thing. And I think people realize that. They're like, a small modular reactor is the way to do that. You can do it safely. It appears like you can do it safely. I'm not an expert there, but like, I think that all bolsters the case for uranium that we were talking about several years ago, and it is now the time. So I don't think it's crazy at all and I would probably just own the bigger stocks have pulled back. They've pulled, like, Cameco and all this stuff. They've pulled back. I mean, like, I think you want to play easy baseball. I mean, those companies have got a dominant position. I think it's really hard to go with like the 6 cent private placement. And I mean, uranium projects are huge. They're expensive. They take a long time to work on. And I think if you want to go down to that micro level, then you have to really dedicate yourself. I don't think that's a stock tip situation. I think that's like crisscrossing the fields and prairies of the world, making sure you really know what's going on. So I mean, that's an option, but I think you really got to make sure you're up for that.
Well, EB, tell us about the Tucker letter, where people can find that. I will say it's one of the most entertaining newsletters out there. You have a very unique style where you always tell one or more stories to make a point. It's really great. Where can people find that? And also tell us whatever you're able to about your upcoming book. Do you have a release date yet?
Yeah, I do. Well, I do. So the Tucker letter is ebtucker.com. You can read a big chunk of it for free. There is a paywall protecting the portfolio and also protecting, at the end, I have this segment called Endnotes that is whatever I want to talk about, which this week I'm talking about the Hammond B3 organ and how much I enjoy listening to it. It's like, a lot of people write me and say it's their favorite part, and it's my favorite part to write. I mean, the stock stuff feels cheap, but life is enhanced when you learn about new things, and I think that's really important. But anyway, ebtucker.com. Please read. Please enjoy. I write so that you'll read, and you read so that I'll write. There's no marketing. There's no ads. There's nothing, and nobody tells me what to do. So anyway, so the book. Okay, here's where the book is right now. So the book is like 90% done. I'm trying to figure out how I want to end it, and the targeted release is end of this quarter. So I mean, a lot of the work is done. It's a matter of kind of like sewing it together at the end, and I'm having some struggle with time. I mean, it's amazing how busy you really have to kind of like sit in a hole and write these things. I mean, I sat here at this desk for about 7 days, like early at the end of April, early May, and wrote probably like 26,000 words, 30,000 words, like nonstop. I mean, that's like 120 or 30 pages of a book, But I mean, it's the writing's been going on since January. It's pretty much done, and so the target is the end of the quarter, and then we're struggling with the name. That's the other thing. We started out, with one name, and then went to another name, and now we got like 4 names, and we're kind of like, wow. I mean, I think we got to write the close and then figure out the name. But I think it's going to be an important book. It's going to be the kind of book that you want to buy and give. I wish I read this book when I was, in my early 20s. It would have helped me understand that you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You're going to be better than fine. And your job is to flow through the river of life, and you can direct it a little bit. You can put yourself in certain situations. You can prepare yourself for luck. That's something people really need to understand, and that's what you should focus on. And you should not worry about a lot of these other things. And I think it's almost like a handbook for happiness, which I think people badly need. I think they're badly in need of that now, and I think it's going to get worse. And so stories, real stories, vulnerable stories, I think are the way to show people that.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to put a link to ebtucker.com. I'm sure you're going to update people through the newsletter when the book does come out so they can keep up to date there as well. Thank you so much, EB, for coming on the show. It's been a blast.
Thanks for having me. I hope maybe I'll see you in the Balkans at some point.
And thank you for joining us today. This episode was brought to you by ARC Silver Gold Osmium. Go to arcsgo.com for all of your precious metals needs and contact owner Ian Everard today at 307-264-9441 or by email at ian@arcsgo.com, and make sure to tell him that Commodity Culture sent you. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.